Hey guys, this is Paul Aragon. I'm the author of Breaking Chains, Hope for Addicts and Their Families, Substance Abuse Recovery Specialist. And today I'd like to talk to you about the brain on drugs. And um, so what I'd like to talk to you about is why is it so hard for addicts to get off drugs? I know a lot of loved ones of the addict will say, um, why can't my loved one get off drugs? Why can't they stop? I wish they would just stop doing it. And I would love to tell you that it's that easy, but it's not. Because addiction actually centers in the brain. There's a prefrontal cortex, left parietal lobe, right parietal lobe, cerebellum, and right inside the middle of all that, just like the yolk of an egg, is called the midbrain, or the pleasure center of the brain. That's where all the good stuff happens, where all the happy stuff happens. So, like I'm happy doing this video, so dopamine is being released, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain. It's being released. It's making me feel good because I love doing this kind of stuff. Um, Bowling, playing with our kids at the park, eating, sleeping, intimacy with our spouse, all those things throughout the day are releasing dopamine, small amounts of dopamine in the midbrain. And so, to give you kind of an idea of what that looks like, if you look up at the sky at night and you see all those stars in the sky, that's what the midbrain looks like. And all those stars are symbols of the cells. So that's how many cells you have in the brain. And when one of those cells wants to talk to another cell, they do it through neurotransmitters, which is dopamine, serotonin. The chemical we're talking about today is dopamine, and a few other chemicals, but the one we're talking about today is dopamine. Um, and so that star, or that cell A, which is the transmitter, and star B, or cell B, is the receiver or the receptor. So cell A is going to send the message that you're getting ready to go to the park and play with your kids, or you're getting ready to eat ice cream. And so cell A, or star A, the transmitter, will release small amounts of dopamine. It'll go to cell B, which is the receiver. It'll receive the message, and cell B will say, "Boy, ice cream? How cool!" And that's where the happiness comes from. Then what it'll do is it'll send it through two reuptake valves in cell A. Cell A will have two reuptake valves, and it'll go up into those two reuptake valves, go back into the cell, and prepare itself for another pleasure. It's almost like a cell within a cell. And um, so what happens is the brain releases and can release anywhere from 25 to 200 nanograms, not milligrams, nanograms of dopamine at one time, and the highest being intimacy with our spouse. Uh, and all these cells are doing it at the same time, just like looking up at the sky at all those stars are talking to each other at the same time, sending the same message. That's how the brain works. We're going to just talk about one cell today because it's easier to understand that. Um, so what happens is uh, you smoke marijuana and more. Let me backtrack. So when we have intimacy with our spouse, 200 nanograms of dopamine approximately are being released at one time. So it goes 200 nanograms once it's done in the synapse will go up through those two reuptake valves, prepare itself for another pleasure. So the brain is only used to reuptaking approximately 200 nanograms or units of dopamine at one time. So when you start using drugs like marijuana, which releases between 400 and 600 nanograms of dopamine, heroin releases between 600 and 900 nanograms of dopamine, cocaine releases between 900 and 1100 nanograms of dopamine, and you have a powerhouse hitter, methamphetamine, which releases between 1100 and 1600 nanograms of dopamine at one time. So what do you think happens to all that extra dopamine in the synapse? The synapse is, if you're looking up at the sky at all those stars, all that blackness that's in between each star, that's what the synapse is. That's the synapse in the brain. That's all the space between all the cells. Uh, so what do you think happens to all that extra dopamine if you do methamphetamine, which releases up to 1,600 nanograms of dopamine, depending upon the quality of the dope, the dope, the size of the user, his tolerance level. There's a lot of It depends on each addict how much it's going to release at a time, depending upon a lot of things. So, but if it's going to release up to 16, methamphetamine releases up to 1,600 nanograms of dopamine. The brain's only used to reuptaking 200 nanograms. What do you think happens to that other 1,400 nanograms of dopamine from methamphetamines? Let me explain it like this. A fire hose, we know a fire hose is about that big and round. And a garden hose is only about that big around, right? So the garden hose can't handle as much water as the fire hose has because it's not big enough. So the reuptake valves are not big enough in the cells to reuptake 1,400 extra nanograms of dopamine. So it's only going to reuptake the 200. The rest floats about the synapse, flows out. But basically, you can say that it floats in space. And then what happens is it ends up dissipating. It disappears. So the next time you go to use marijuana, heroin, crack cocaine, or methamphetamines, your tolerance level is going to rise. That's where we get our tolerance level from. Why? Because there's not that much dopamine in the brain because of the last time you used. Now, yes, the brain will remake dopamine, but it takes between 3 months to 18 months for the brain to remake that dopamine, depending upon how much it has to remake, especially if you're using it every day. So the first time you smoke, you've already lost dopamine, and there's a chance, with marijuana and drugs like that, uh, you'll start out taking one hit and you'll be, whoa, I'm good, I don't need more, am I? And then the next time you're going to be able to do a couple more hits, then a couple more hits, then a couple more hits. This is because the brain is not achieving what you first taught it, which is that large amount of dopamine being released. So it's going to take more of that marijuana. It's going to take more of that heroin. It's going to take more of that crack. It's going to take more of that methamphetamine for you to reach where you were before. That's where addiction takes place. Is because you're smoking more dope, shooting more dope, you're doing more dope, and your tolerance level is rising very, very quickly. The thing is with the drugs today, it's kind of like back in the old days when we had the first phone was a phone on the wall, and you kind of cranked the thing and got hold of an operator, and they plugged you into somebody that you wanted to talk to. Now we got cell phones with internet and everything else on everything in the world. There's nothing the phones don't have so far, uh, and so that's the way drugs are. Is that the drugs are getting better, 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 and better, and they're using more dangerous chemicals in these drugs, which is causing addiction to happen much faster than it did back in the day of the telephone, that old telephone on the wall, if you get what I'm trying to tell you. So young people are becoming addicted much quicker now, especially with the designer drugs that they have out, like bath salts and ecstasy and things like that, all these new drugs coming out, because they're really cheap to make, and they pump them out by the millions, and they make a lot of money off of them, but what they're doing is they're ruining lives. Uh, and those designer drugs actually release lots of dopamine as well, depending upon which one it is. The bath salts can release anywhere from 600 to 1,000 nanograms of dopamine at one time, which means there's 800 nanograms of dopamine that's getting lost in the synapse, and your tolerance level, even with those designer drugs, is going to rise really quick. Let alone everybody that makes those different types of designer drugs use different chemicals, and they use different ingredients, and so you never know what you're going to get. And this is why people are dropping dead from these designer drugs, because they don't realize what they're doing. But that's a whole video in itself. So that's why people get addicted to drugs so quickly, is because all that dopamine. And so a lot of addicts, they'll get to a point where they're saying, God, this meth is crap. Oh, this heroin is crap. Oh, this crack is crap. It's cheap. It's no good. And it's not that the meth and heroin and the crack's no good. What it is you've been depleted of the dopamine, so you're not getting high anymore. And now you're thinking that you got buck dope. You didn't get buck dope. Your tolerance level is so high that now you're just using to feel normal. you're not even getting high off the drug anymore because you have depleted the dopamine in the brain. Um, and all the things that we used to love to do, like playing with our kids, and bowling, and playing baseball, uh, and eating and sleeping, all those things are affected. This is why addicts, when they get off drugs, they experience a lot of insomnia. They're sick. They're highly depressed because they don't feel joy. This is called anhedonia. Anhedonia. Anhedonia is the inability to feel pleasure, and almost every addict suffers from this in withdrawals and in uh, pause, which is post-acute withdrawal syndrome. Um, and that kind of depression, even with marijuana, can last for years. Even the marijuana is another video. It's a whole another video of this medical marijuana stuff. I'll have to make one on that um, because it's anything but um, natural. They pump so much chemicals into that to the soil to make these plants grow twice as fast and twice as big and become twice as potent. Uh, and these chemicals going into the plants and then going into the seeds to plant the next season, which is going to be chemically induced as well, and they're called super plants, or they're called It's called cloning. So they clone them, which causes even more dopamine to be released at one time. This new marijuana that's been out for the last few years, about 5 years now. So this is why the addict gets addicted to drugs so quickly, and then when they get off, they don't have any of that dopamine. They're depressed. They can't sleep. Their eating habits are off. Um, Food don't taste good. Um, their anxiety levels high. Uh, the addict goes through a lot trying to get off, and so a lot of addicts can't deal with it. They just can't deal with it. They don't know why. They feel so bad, so crappy all the time, and that's because they have no joy. Literally, they have no joy. They have no happiness. That happiness has been depleted, and the only way they're going to get it back is through time. It's going to take time to get it back. Uh, the more months that you have off drugs, the brain will begin to fix itself. It'll begin to remake that dopamine. Within 18 months, you may not get all that dopamine back, but you're going to get most of it back. Uh, um, Things may not be as pleasurable as the way they were before drugs, but you will be able to feel pleasure again. Um, and that is the consequences of using. But but you will get that back. But it's just going to take time, and you're going to have to rough through the depressions. I saw a therapist and had to help me use some non-narcotic, non-addictive uh, depressants for anxiety and depression. And I took those for a little while, but I made sure that I let them know that I was an addict and that I couldn't have anything addictive. Um, and they do make some that are non-addictive that are actually pretty good out there right now that'll help you get through that. Talking to people, going to meetings, going 12-step meetings, all that stuff will help you. But you've got to get past the withdrawals, which usually can last anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most. And then after that, you're going to go through the pause with the post-acute withdrawal symptoms, and that's what you go through after the withdrawals. And that may last a couple of weeks, and it may last months. It just depends on the addict, depends on the tolerance level, depends on the drug, depends on what they use, depends on their size, depends on the weight, depends on a lot of things. So, so if you're watching this video and you have questions for me, you can reach me on Facebook at Breaking Chains Chronicles of a Meth Addict. Just type that in your search bar, it'll pop right up. That's Breaking Chains Chronicles of a Meth Addict on Facebook. You don't have to be a meth addict to get hold of me. I've done all the drugs. It just so happened those are the name of my two books combined. So it's Breaking Chains Chronicles of a Meth Addict on Facebook, and my two books, which you can find at AmazonBooks.com. It's called Breaking Chains: Hope for Addicts and Their Families, which has been sold all over the world and help restore families. And I recommend that book to loved ones of the addict. I recommend that book to the addicts, and I also recommend that book to those in recovery. It's Breaking Chains: Hope for Addicts and Their Families on AmazonBooks.com. My other book is called Chronicles of a Meth Addict, which is addicts all over the world. These are stories from addicts all over the world that have shared with me personally their story and their road to recovery. And you're gonna love that book. That's a good book. I'm also gonna have another book coming out next month called Meth Pandemic, and this is gonna be a top seller for sure. It's gonna be a big seller. My first one was, um, and I know you guys are gonna enjoy these books. So I hope to hear from you guys on Breaking Change Chronicles and Meth Addict on Facebook.com. And until then, stay blessed and always pray for the addict who still suffers because we know what it's like to suffer. Peace.